This episode of The Witch Wave is brought to you by UBU Skills. Ready to add some confidence to your voice for your social media, speeches, and spell work? Megan Hamilton is a tarot reader, host of the Embracing Enchantment podcast, and a speaking coach who loves to work with witches and folks inclined to the clandestine. Learn how to strengthen your voice, build visibility, and become a fierce advocate by grabbing Megan's free speaking and shadow work guides at www.ubuskills.com/witchwave. And UBU is spelled letter U, letter B, letter U. While you're there, find out how Witchwave listeners can work with Megan at 10% off. This episode of The Witchwave is brought to you by Mixed Color. Hand stitching is an act of magic, adorning and transforming cloth while infusing the fibers with protective and fortuitous energy. If you want to explore embroidery not just as a skill, but as a portal into the imaginal realms of your own mind, then the workshops from Mixed Color Textile Studio are just what you need to enhance your craft. Mixed Color is run by my friend and prior Witchwave guest, Christy Johnson, and I know you're going to love these classes. Explore one of their free stitch series to get started. From enchanted blooms to mythic creatures, you're sure to find something to spark your creative spirit. Head to mixedcolor.net for more. That's M as in magic, IXED color.net. This episode of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Sister Temperance Tarot. Angeliska of Sister Temperance Tarot offers readings that are compassionate, trauma-informed, and powerfully intuitive. These sessions are designed to help people navigate life's biggest questions, transitions, losses, and awakenings with clarity, grace, and care. That's no doubt why Sister Temperance Tarot has been voted Best Psychic/Tarot Reader in Austin for 10 years running. They've been reading professionally since 1999, and they specialize in readings for artists, fellow mystics, creative spirits, seekers of magic, and lovers of mystery. Come with your questions and leave with insight, strength, and a spell of support. Readings are available by phone or Zoom, so book a session now or learn more over at sistertemperancetarot.com.
The world is filled with bewitching people, and you might be one too. Welcome to the podcast where art is magic is real, and reality is stranger than dreams. I'm Pam Grossman, and this is The Witch Wave.
Hello, and welcome to The Witch Wave. I hope you're hanging in there and fighting the good fight in whatever way you're able to, whether that's calling your senators to tell them to vote against the so-called big, beautiful bill, especially if you have Republican senators, or sending aid to the victims of the human rights atrocities in Palestine. As ever, I recommend the Palestine Children's Relief Fund, though there are so many other worthy organizations that could use our support. Or maybe you're protesting trans discrimination or immigrants being illegally removed from their homes. I know there is so much to be concerned about and involved in right now. And I know that if we each just do even one thing, it will help massively. But I also hope that you are taking time to celebrate the good and to care for yourself and your loved ones, because that is truly the only way we can sustain our energy and replenish our hearts. To that end, I'm delighted to announce 2 exciting things happening this month. First up, I'll be taking part in the wonderful Deep Water Literary Fest on June 20th via a conversation with prior Witchwave guests Christy Johnson and Olga Naiman. And we'll be at one of my favorite shops in Narrowsburg, New York, Madame Fortuna. We'll be interviewed by shop owner Allison Ward, all about the relationship between creativity and magic. More on that over at pamgrossman.com/events. And that event is free, but do check out all of the other offerings at Deepwater Literary Fest. It is truly one of my favorite festivals in the country. It is so wonderful. And I'm doubly delighted to announce that on Thursday, June 26th, Jonica Stuckey and I will be teaching a ritual workshop all about the wild magic of the god Pan. Yes, that goat-footed, pipe-playing, horny as hell in all the ways rascal has so much to teach us about ecstasy and desire and the mysteries of the natural world. I just know this is going to be a really fun one, so do sign up if you feel called to. Once again, it'll be online on Thursday, June 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern, but it will indeed be recorded for all registrants to watch for 30 days afterwards. So absolutely no worries if you can't make it live. Sign up anyway. You can grab your spot now at the link in my Phantasmaphile Instagram bio, or again at pamgrossman.com/events. One of the other ways that I've been keeping myself centered and soothed is by turning to music. Some of you might recall that my word of intention for 2025 is music. And it's been so astonishing in the best way to see how the relationship between music and magic has been showing up for me since that New Year's declaration. Now, I've mentioned several times over, I know, that the words chant, enchant, and incantation all share a root word, which means to sing. And the idea of songs as spells has been even more prominent for me over the past several months. When researching my forthcoming book, Magic Maker, I learned that the Norse god Odin is also sometimes referred to as the Great Singer, and his rune spells are often called songs. The Old Norse word Galdr, and I might be mispronouncing that, it's spelled Galdr, is often translated in English to mean magic, but it actually refers to a type of spell that is sung. And I'm more actively drawn to the idea of making my own magical music again, as well as being more intentional about collaborating with magical musicians and listening to their sonic spells more deeply. And so I am beyond thrilled to have sonic sorceress Kelli Scarr on the show today, because when I listen to her music, something deep inside me is stirred. Her prior album, No Rush, falls under the category of talismanic music for me, because I listen to it whenever I need to feel a sense of the sacred. And so when Kelli reached out to share her new album, Greater Mysteries, with me, I was giddy with anticipation, and my gods, did it exceed my great expectations. You'll hear us talk all about the gorgeously otherworldly, underworldly album at length, as well as Kelli's relationship to goddesses, the earth, and the body. But before we get to that, first, let's check and see what's come through on the Witch Wire.
Who is it?
Witches! Hi, Pam. This is Ray, and I'm calling to ask for your advice and magical guidance on reconnecting with my own creativity after what feels like a decades-long dry spell and period where I just didn't make space for and honor that part of myself. I'm in midlife now, and of course have, connected with creativity in many ways during my life. I'm a parent. I can cook. I can garden. There's all these things I do that I recognize, of course, are generative. But in terms of more artistic creation, specifically for me writing, I feel like it's a gift I was given a connection with as a kid and younger adult, took for granted, and just allowed to fall away. So, and I have a lot of sadness about that. So for me, a big part of this process is not just, how do I make the time to write, etc. That stuff is logistical, and I feel like it's doable. But I have this other block of really feeling almost like I'm not entitled in a way to reconnect with muses or just access that sort of universal flow that moves through you when you're making art, because I took it for granted and didn't pay it due honor for all these years. It almost feels like I can't get back to it now, which, is interesting psychologically and whatnot. And I do have a therapist and I do journaling, I do those kinds of work, but I'm really curious about using or exploring magical means to just help me along in this process where it feels like there's so much stuckness and disconnection. Thank you so much for any thoughts, and thank you for all the work you do, which is so much engaged with magic, creativity, and that kind of wonderful universal flow. And of course, I am looking forward to that book you have cooking on this subject. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hi, Ray. Thank you for your sweetness and for sending along this question, which I know that so many people listening can relate to. And you're right, my new book, Magic Maker, The Enchanted Path to Creativity, is all about this. And it will indeed be out on October 14th and is available for pre-order everywhere now. And pre-orders are a huge help. But in the interim, yes, I do have some initial thoughts for you. And the first one is to just remind you and reassure you that creativity never goes away. It never abandons us. It is always a part of us as human beings, and it is our birthright. So I hear you that you've been parenting and cooking and using what I call creative force in a lot of different forms already, but you can absolutely choose to use it to write or paint or sing or whatever you feel called to do at any point in your life. It doesn't matter how long it's been since you last did some creative writing, and I'll add that journaling does indeed count. And it doesn't matter how old you are or if you've never tried to do this new form of creative expression before. I promise, I swear it doesn't fucking matter. You get to be creative however you want, whenever you want, forever. Still, I also understand that we sometimes put pressure on ourselves to be good, successful, dazzling, and that self-assessment or self-judgment is what often paralyzes us or at least makes the creative process a hell of a lot less fun. So I'm going to lovingly challenge you to make something that's not about you at all or for you at all. And so therefore your opinion of it is irrelevant. I'd like you to choose a deity and write for them. And even better, choose a deity and write with them. Because I believe that creativity is a collaboration between us and spirit. It's our way of bridging the realms of the invisible and the visible, the immaterial and the material. And I believe that we do this collaboratively with the spirit world. Together, we make force into form. And so I recommend that you try choosing a deity and working with them as you write. Now, an easy way to do this, just to get your juices flowing, is to write an ode, an invocation, a panegyric to them. First of all, it's a wonderful way to break through your creative block and just get you writing. But it's also a way of inviting them to help you in your creative endeavors. Now, if writing to them doesn't appeal for whatever reason, at the very least, I encourage you to call on that deity to assist you in writing whatever it is you feel called to write. And in doing so, you'll remember that you're not just writing for yourself or for an audience of people. You're writing to delight spirit itself and to be a channel through which it can flow and take shape here on earth. So don't judge what you write. Don't decide whether it's good or bad writing. Just make it sincere and spirit-led. You can always go back and edit things later with your more critical brain if you decide to. But for now, your only job is to let your writing flow with magic and devotion and help from spirit, and to let me know how it goes. Now, on to my guest. Kelli Scarr is an American singer, composer, and multi-instrumentalist based in New York's Hudson Valley. She is also the founder of Vera Jane Music, a pioneering record label dedicated to championing the talents of women artists over the age of 40. Raised in Northern California, Scarr's musical journey began in church, eventually leading her to Berklee College of Music. Over the years, she's woven her way through an eclectic range of projects, from fronting the bands Moonraker and Salt Samovar to a significant collaboration, writing, recording, and touring with Moby. Her artistry extends into film scoring, and she earned an Emmy nomination for her score to the HBO documentary In a Dream, and has composed music for dozens of films, TV shows, and commercials. As a solo artist, Scarr has released 3 albums: Peace in 2010, Dangling Teeth in 2012, and one of my all-time favorite albums, No Rush, in 2021, establishing herself as a singular voice in atmospheric, deeply emotive songwriting. Her 4th album, Greater Mysteries, is out on this Friday, June 13th, and marks a new creative chapter which draws on timeless mythic journeys to the underworld. And it is pulsing, potent, and sublime.
I hear an earth song, I hear a body song, I hear a spring song.
This album serves as an invitation into the initiatory cycle of transformation, where endings become beginnings and something new is ready to emerge. Though Kelli's work has spanned format and musical style, all of her projects embrace a sense of experimentation, improvisation, and sacred seeking through song. Kelli joined me remotely from her home in upstate New York, and you can watch the video of our conversation over on my YouTube channel, which is at Phantasmophile. Kelli Scarr, welcome to the Witch Wave.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. And insiders know that you and I have actually spoken before on an episode of Witch Wave Plus when your prior album came out, because I am such a big fan of that album. And that's your album, No Rush. And so I do just quickly want to encourage people to go and listen to that episode if they feel compelled to, because it is one of my favorite conversations. But moving to the present moment, Kelli, I thought that I could not love your music anymore. And then you created this new album, Greater Mysteries. Oh my God, it is so exquisite. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So, by way of introduction, since we spoke before to our more exclusive limited audience, and we're now speaking to the whole Witch Wave audience, I would just love for you to root people in your musical and magical practice. Why do you make music, and how does it feel magical to you broadly? Like, what is your approach to making music?
Sure. I think in order to answer that question, I immediately return to my earliest memories of making music, which was singing with my grandmother. And she used to have this wood rocking chair, and she would sit me in her lap and we would sing together. And I mean, of course, I don't remember the specifics from that time, but I imagine that I was so moved by the resonance of our voices together. And we were also singing spiritual music at the time. So I'm sure that was what first formed the connection for me between singing and resonance and something greater being at play in the universe. And I've basically been chasing that ever since. My process has evolved over time, but I would say this one recent album, I really started dipping into channeling more consciously. So it's like I can't even remember like writing a lot of the material.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I know that certain elements were influenced by the setting that I was in. I wrote a lot of the seeds when I was at an artist residency in Crete. And there was just the sound of the cicadas was just like pulsing in the background. And as you, I'm sure, noticed, and hopefully folks who are listening to this, when they go check out the music, will hear that there is this pulse happening the whole time. And being in that environment and kind of surrendering to that really kind of allowed me to get out of the way and for the magic to come through.
Oh, and my goodness, did it ever. So forgive me for talking about your prior album, but that album is so important to me. And I talked about it a few times over the years on the show. No Rush, to me, there's certainly lots of beautiful lyrics, but it also feels like a sound bath. You worked with Nate Martinez, who is a sound bath healer, in addition to a multi-instrumentalist, as you are as well. And as I told you when we first spoke, No Rush, it's like this sanctuary of an album. It's an album that I shared with you I listened to in the bath because it's just a sacred, soothing, centering album. I feel myself struggling to describe your music because it really, to me, transcends genre. And maybe we can talk about that in a moment. But because I love that album so much and it was so soothing and such a touchstone for me, and it came out during the pandemic, when you shared your new music with me, I was like a little nervous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that is such a precious album to me. And Greater Mysteries, it really does feel like a departure in a lot of ways. And yet, I would say there's a similar through line of like lots of different musical styles, but I think it also lives in the world of ambient music and spiritual music, even though, again, there's a lot of lyrics as well. How would you describe, before we get into the subject matter, sonically, how do you describe Greater Mysteries?
I'm struggling because I still don't have a great answer to this question, but I guess one way I've described it is it's mythic jazz to a pulse.
Yes, perfect. There is a lot of kind of jazz time signatures and instrumentation. And yet, when people think of jazz, I think people who aren't very familiar with that broad genre sometimes think of it as very saxophony and, being in a club. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas this, to me, feels like it's a little more in line with like when both Coltrane's, John and Alice, when they both got really more into their like spiritual vibes. Are there any other musical anchors or North Stars for you that you had in mind?
In terms of like influencing the sound?
Yeah.
Yeah, hands down, the North Star for many years has been Talk Talk, Spirit of Eden.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful album. And I think we talked about that last time, too.
Okay.
That album is so precious.
That album, I don't know how many people know about this, but it was largely improvised. Like they brought players into the studio in a dark room and basically just hit record and had them improvise. And then they chopped up all the playing and then created the compositions out of the like fabric of the improv. So we borrowed that approach when we were making Greater Mysteries. Yeah, we can get into it later, but it's largely improvised.
Wow. I had no idea. Okay. Yeah. And just to also give people a little of the musical texture, and I should say that some people are going to be watching this on YouTube, but the full episode with my formal intro and, the Witchwire question from a listener and everything, that will have some of your songs edited into it. So I really do recommend that anyone watching this on YouTube also check out the full Witchwave episode, which will be released on the same day that this is. But that said, let's name some of the instruments that people will hear.
Sure. Okay. So the foundation of the recordings is myself singing, and Sam Kassir is playing piano, Jeff Lipstein is playing drums, and D. James Goodwin, who's also the producer, is playing electric bass. And then on top of that, we recorded about 10 other players. So we've got someone who played clarinet and flute. We've got trombone. We have another vocalist who we'll probably get into later, plays the part of a character in the Myth of Inanna. And then we have a cello player, we have a choir, and then we have a few guitar players who play different styles and types of guitar.
So beautiful. Okay, since you have invoked her sacred name into our magic circle, when you were coming up with the description for this album, you wrote about how this is based, or at least inspired by, the myth of the descent of Inanna. So some listeners are going to know about that because it's come up on the show before. But for those who don't know Inanna and her myth, can you give us just the littlest summary of it?
Yeah. So I like to first start with the fact that Inanna is the first poem of written record. And it was written by a priestess named Enheduanna 5,000 years ago in Sumeria, which is now Iraq.
Yes.
And so first, that is just like magic. And what, I'm sure the story had been told for thousands of years prior to that. But what we know, which was found on clay tablets a couple hundred years ago, is that Inanna was the queen of heaven and earth. And she heard a call to go to the underworld to attend the funeral rites of her sister Ereshkigal's deceased husband. And basically, she thinks she knows what she's doing and she has all of her powers about her. And as she starts on this journey to the underworld, she has to surrender an element of her power at each of these 7 gates until she reaches the bottom. And I don't know if you want me to go all the way.
Let me pause you there. Let me pause you there and say that one of my favorite parts of the myth is as she goes through each gate, she's shedding something that she's wearing. So by the end, I believe she's nude entirely.
Yep.
Is that right? So she's
Yeah.
completely shed her crown, and I'm forgetting her scepter, her necklace, all of these different
Mhm.
kind of ornamentations of power or
Yes.
talismans. And then she's totally bare.
Yeah.
And then furthers her descent into the
Yeah.
underworld.
Yeah.
And we'll just say things ensue. She eventually, as I recall, she dies pretty brutally. I think she's hung
She's
like,
hung on a hook.
yeah, she's hung on a hook.
And she's left to rot for 3 days.
Yes. And then, of course, she is brought back to life. I think in
Yeah.
some tellings she's rescued and eventually goes on the ascent. She is reborn. She's resurrected. And
Yeah.
I imagine a lot of listeners know that a lot of these poems about descents, about catabasis, they often are based on the movement of planets. And so
Mhm.
my understanding is that Inanna was the planet Venus. And so when Venus would, kind of be, what is it, the morning star and the evening star?
Yep.
So this is kind of a metaphorical myth that's based
Yeah.
on what the planets in the sky were doing. Is that what you found as well?
Yes, and also mirrors the regenerative cycle of nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Of course. So, when did you fall in love with this myth, and what made you decide to make a whole album about it?
Well, the theme of the album is transformation, and the theme came first.
Okay.
I just kept wanting to know more about the cycle. I had gone through a big one myself, a big descent. And I think it first came by way of Maureen Murdoch's book, The Heroine's Journey.
Mm.
So I picked up that book and I was like, okay, right. Like, this is all about transformation. This is about a cycle. This is about a cycle of change that affects you on the emotional, social, spiritual, psychological level. And in that book, she mentions the myth of Inanna several times, but it didn't really get me yet. And somewhere between deciding on the theme of transformation and going to Crete to do this artist residency, because I knew I was working on a new record, I came across my mentor. Her name's Dr. Catherine Svela, and she is a mythologist.
Ooh.
And
That's the best job ever.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So I started working with her, and long story short, I was in Crete actually a second time. So this is like 2 years into making this music. And she has a podcast about mythology, and she had done a 4-part series on Inanna. I'm driving around Crete with my girlfriend, and she's like, I want to know more. Like, tell me about your mentor. And I was like, let's listen to this series. So we're listening to this 4-part series, and it just struck me. I was like, this is my girl. I'm like, this is the way I'm going to go deeper. Because my mentor had been pushing me. She was like, you're not going dark enough. There's so much more richness to this cycle that you're not allowing yourself to experience or express. And so, yeah, hearing her tell the story of Inanna and her interpretation of all of the layers of it really took me deeper in. And I was like, okay, I've got to stay here. Like this, there's something for the music here.
Okay. I have way too many questions based on what you just said. The first one is just a very nosy question.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to answer it, totally fine. But you made a reference to going through a dark cycle in your
Yeah.
own life. Is there anything that you feel comfortable sharing around that?
Sure. I mean, well, there was one that I was a part of, collectively, which was COVID, right?
Right.
And looking back now, of course, I can see that that was like such an initiation, an opportunity for initiation, in addition to, all of the destruction that occurred for so many and continues to. I think it started there. And then I went through like a really painful breakup. And then I moved from New York City to upstate New York, which was like my dream, but of course came with a lot of its own challenges.
Yeah.
And I was going through a really hard time parenting. I was reconsidering my relationship with alcohol and abstaining for long periods of time. And so it was a combination, I would say, of like 6 kind of areas where I was being pulled into the underworld and having to really face some hard, dark times.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you went through that. And I'm so happy that you made this beautiful music out of it, because I really do think that one of the most magical things about art is that it does help us transmute not just pain, it can be pleasure, but it helps us transmute our emotions into something we can share with others. And then it becomes an elixir for other people. And so this album certainly is that for me. And I know it's going to be for many, many people. So I want to also ask about this mythologist. When you say she's your mentor, what does that mean exactly? How do you work with a mythologist? What is that relationship like?
Yeah, well, I had first heard about her through her podcast, actually. And she was interviewing another mythologist. And there was something about the way my mentor, Dr. Svela, reflected back to the person she was interviewing, what they had just said, that I was like, I like the way she interprets things. So I Google her, I go on her website, and I see that of the many services she offers is creative mentoring. And I didn't even know that was a thing. And so I'm like reading the description. I'm like, oh my God, this is what I need. Like, cause again, I'd like set out to make this record. I knew at that point that I was going to Greece. I knew I wanted it to be about transformation, but I was like, I need help. So reach out to her. And we basically started meeting every single Friday starting in April 2022. So it's been 3 years now.
All online or in
All
person?
online.
Okay.
She's in Colorado. We meet via Zoom every week, and she's been like the doula of my project.
Oh, I love that so much. How beautiful.
It's the greatest gift. Sorry.
Yeah. She's kind of like a creative midwife in a way.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
So wonderful.
Exactly.
And so you start working on some of this music. How did Inanna in particular start coming through for you, whether sonically or lyrically?
I think on the sonic front, I was able to start to express how I felt her experience might sound, through the stages of the cycle, which I think is pretty apparent when you hear it, like where you're at in the stages. And then lyrically, it just kind of organically started happening, like in the first song that's called First Days. And if you're not familiar, or you are, I highly recommend. There's a translation by Diane Wolkstein and Samuel Noah Kramer. And the opening of their translation is like, in the first days, in the very first days, in the first nights, in the very first nights. And as you'll hear in the music, that ends up showing up in the opening track of the album. And then I kind of want to like leave like a little Easter eggy for folks. I don't want to give away like all of it, but there's like noticeable points in the cycle of the record where you will notice that you're hearing words that you've heard before, or you've read before, or if you've felt before. Because that's certainly how, like reading this myth, I was like, oh, I know this story. Like, it's in my blood. It's in my bones.
Yes.
Like I'm getting the chills. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. But that's what I often think about that myth, because Joseph Campbell has had a huge influence on me, and yet he was a very flawed scholar and a flawed individual, and he absolutely had very like heteronormative and gender normative and patriarchal ways of looking at mythology. And I remember encountering someone, and for those who aren't super familiar with Joseph Campbell, we'll just say he was like the ultimate mythologist, and he had, so many books, but his most famous one, Hero with 1,000 Faces, basically talks about like the myth, the idea of a hero that goes on a journey. At first they refuse the call, then they say okay, then they get a mentor or a guide who eventually, there are a lot of trials. Eventually they go into the underworld, they come back out, and then they reintegrate, right? And so I remember reading that he was once asked like, well, does this apply to women? I think, didn't he teach at like Barnard, or was it Sarah Lawrence?
Sarah Lawrence.
Yeah, an all-woman school. So he had all these female students.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, your myths are about motherhood, and your myths are about loving a man, or whatever. I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. And it's like, what are you fucking talking about? Inanna is going on a journey. She was probably the first story where somebody, and it happens to be a feminine entity, is going on a journey, has trials, goes into an underworld, comes out. She's a heroine, right?
Yeah.
And it's thrilling to me that her story is being retold and reclaimed, and you're obviously doing it in your own style as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been hearing her name a lot lately. I'm sure
Yeah.
you have too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, did you consciously work with her as a goddess? Like, did you set up an altar for her or any of that kind of, more traditional worship? Or is your connection through her sonic and creative, which I think is absolutely a form of devotion?
Yeah, I think for me, it's more of an energetic thing.
Yeah.
Once I opened the door of the myth, like it just kind of became like a part of me and the lens that I was viewing things through. I'm looking up because I have this picture of a terracotta sculpture of Aphrodite on my wall, which
Hmm.
I couldn't really explain from the beginning. But for some reason, I bought this picture on Etsy and it's been on my wall for 3 years. And I have all the names of the songs going around her in a
Mm,
circle.
mm.
But, I'm not a scholar of mythology, so I don't know all the intricacies. But like what I do know is that it is thought that like Inanna also took this spiral journey through other mythologies,
Oh,
right? And she
yeah.
became like the myth of Demeter and Persephone, and
Hmm.
then Venus, and then Aphrodite. Aphrodite on my wall is as close as an altar to that as I got, I think, in the creative process.
On that note, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. This episode of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Mineralogy Project. Have crystals been calling you? Do you find yourself wandering into rock shops and metaphysical stores and coming out with pockets full of stones, asking yourself, what do I do with all these rocks? Or have you been intuitively incorporating crystals in your meditation, altar practice, or energy work and feeling called to learn more? Then you should sign up for Crystal Class with Mineralogy Project. It's an online, self-directed course that dives deep into all things crystalline, from history and geology to energetic protection and crystal practices. This course presents a thoughtful structure in which to investigate and deepen your relationship with crystals and sparks inspiration for the ways you can incorporate them in your daily life, rituals, and practices. So whether you're crystal curious or a longtime collector, this class is for you. Sign up for Crystal Class at mineralogyproject.com or follow the link in bio on Instagram at Mineralogy Project. And Mineralogy Project is spelled M as in magic, INERALOGY Project. And Witch Wave listeners receive an exclusive $40 registration discount with the code WitchWave40. That's WitchWave40. So head on over to mineralogyproject.com or follow the link in bio at Mineralogy Project on Instagram. The Witch Wave is sponsored by BetterHelp. Listen, I know there's still a lot of stigma surrounding men's mental health, but there is such strength that comes from maintaining a healthy mind. And I sincerely think the world would be a better place if more men would go to therapy. Men today face immense pressure to perform, to provide, and keep it all together. So it's no wonder that 6 million men in the U.S. suffer from depression every year, and it's often undiagnosed. But real strength comes from opening up about what you're carrying and doing something about it so you can be at your best for yourself and for everyone in your life. So if you're a man who seems to be feeling the weight of the world, talk to someone, a friend, a loved one, a therapist. Now, I love my current therapist, and lots of the dudes I love, from my husband to my dad, go to therapy too. And I've seen firsthand how therapy has helped them feel less anxiety and more ease around meeting their goals and just feeling good in general. Therapy is so helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. And it isn't just for those who have experienced major trauma. It can just help with day-to-day stresses and pressures. So if you're a dude or you love a dude who could use a bit of extra support, check out BetterHelp. It has an App Store rating of 4.9 out of 5 based on over 1.7 million client reviews. And it's convenient too. You can join a session with a therapist at the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. Plus, you can switch therapists at any time. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of experience. Talk it out with BetterHelp. And our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/witchwave. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/witchwave. Hello, my friend. I am often asked about how people can get even more witchwave and more magic in their lives overall, and I have the answer. You can join me over on the Witchwave Patreon. This is how you can hear from me and my other magical guests on a weekly basis via my Witchwave Plus bi-weekly bonus episodes. And you get the regular Witchwave episodes ad-free, and you get detailed show notes for all of it. And all Patreon members also get access to my monthly ritual workshops, which you can attend live or watch the recording of at your leisure throughout the month. Rewards for some tiers also include magical merch and contests where you can win witchly prizes, as well as early heads up about my workshops before they sell out, and opportunities to work with me one-on-one. And all backers get access to our exclusive digital coven, where you can connect to a community of other wonderful Witchwave witches around the world. So head on over to patreon.com/witchwave and sign up. It's a magnificent way to get more magic in your life and to support the show. Thank you so much. Welcome back to the Witch Wave. So I would love to dive a little deeper into some of the songs specifically. And gosh, I mean, like maybe someday we can literally go track by track and talk about each one. I wish we had the time to do that here. I don't have a favorite. I really think this is an album that is a holistic piece. I imagine it was hard for you to choose singles from it because the whole album is just like, yeah. That said, maybe we can talk about a couple of them.
Yeah.
You know, an early song is called Knowing is the Call.
Yeah.
And this is the only song that, at least currently, when we're recording this, that you've shared the lyrics to on Bandcamp. I won't read the whole thing.
Yeah.
I hear an earth song. I hear a body song. I hear a spring song. The knowing is the call to be made and unmade by a force greater than yourself. And it goes on from there. And it's so beautiful. I know it's always like so awkward to read lyrics. I just want to give people the idea also of the words, because there is something very like incantatory and ecstatic and spiritual about them that I think means that they're, I don't want to say vague, but they're mysterious and universal. And so I think listeners will have different interpretations and different connection points.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, and I feel like very dorky sharing what I'm about to share with you, but I'm going to do it in the spirit of trust and vulnerability. So just like I listened to No Rush in the bath, this album, and you're going to be surprised, but I've been listening to this album as I am doing my workouts. And I'm doing that because listeners know I'm on this new journey of trying to integrate my magic with my physical well-being and exercising, not how I used to, which is like really loud music, but making it like a sacred offering and reconnecting with my body and loving on it when I've had, a complicated relationship with it, as many of us have complicated relationships with our bodies. This has been like really medicinal music for me as I'm going through my exercises, and I do my workouts as a devotion now to Hygeia, the goddess of health. Like your album is literally helping me connect to my body and just really feel all that goddess energy while I'm taking care of myself. So I want to thank you for that.
That is so freaking beautiful. And like, can't even tell you, like, I'm teary-eyed. And I have to say, I just listened to your episode with Kara Claymore. And I mean, yeah, we'll have a separate conversation, but it was so great. Last night, actually, I had dinner with two close friends, one who is a yoga teacher and another who teaches somatic experiencing. And we're creating a movement class to the album. Yeah.
That is so perfect. And so I feel so affirmed because I can't do yoga currently, but if I could, this would be like the perfect yoga album. And, the kind of exercise I'm doing right now, it's not super aerobic at the moment.
Yeah.
It's a lot of like movement and weights and, so it's very like deep and rooted work. And I'm so thrilled that you're going to do some kind of body-oriented interpretation of the album.
Yeah. And I'll share too, like, I have a pretty complicated relationship to my body and to movement in particular, like, and to dancing. And I spent a lot of time in the overdubbing phase as we were adding like layers and layers to the foundational tracks. I would go up to the top floor of my house where I have a picture that Hildegard did of the goddess Sophia. And I would dance to this music in my headphones. And it really also helped me connect with my own body. And that's Inanna's magic.
That's so incredible. And of course, you talk about the body throughout the album. In the track Noticing, which is another of my favorites, there's a line, "Try as I might to think of the answer, it's in my body." And then it goes on and you sing, "Change is already taking place." And I realize that can be the body of the earth. That can be the body of a creation of any kind. But it is very resonant for me as I'm literally trying to heal and strengthen myself right now. So how fabulous. That. I'm so happy that resonates with you.
I also want to share that you telling me that you listened to my last album in the bath has just always stuck with me. And there was the song called Numa on this album.
Yes.
Was one that when I was waiting to get the recording back from Iceland, because something fucking magical happened on that track in particular.
Yes, agree.
I thought of you and I waited and I got in the bath and I listened for the first time and I was just like crying and crying. And it was
Kelli,
so thank you. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. That makes me so happy.
Yeah.
I love that track. It is so gorgeous. What else do you want to say about that? It comes later in the album.
Yeah. That comes as Inanna or us or however you want to feel it is coming back from that underworld experience and is starting to integrate it. Numa to me represents the feeling I had when I went to Greece a couple summers ago and I had the top down in a convertible and I'm driving around this island and I'm just like, I'm so fucking happy to be alive.
Yes.
And like, God, life is so fucking hard, but it's also this.
Yes.
So that's what that song symbolizes to me.
How fabulous. Yeah. All right, let's zoom back out a little bit because I feel like I got so excited to go micro on the album that we should zoom out and go a little bit macro, which is it does seem as though there is a descent.
Mm-hmm.
It then feels like there is a real centerpiece, to me anyway, of this album, which is the track The Yes That Leads, which is over 10 minutes long. It's fucking epic. It's so beautiful and intense. And then there's kind of like a spaciousness that happens that, to me at least, feels like, okay, and now we're starting to go back on the ascent again. Is that kind of how you feel about it energetically?
Oh, completely.
Okay, great. And let's talk about then that centerpiece track. The Yes That Leads is such a wonderful title. Can you please just say words about that beautiful track, Kelli, whatever you want to share?
Yeah, I would say another mentor for me in the making of this record is, though she wasn't aware of it, is Vicki Noble.
Oh, yes.
Is the creator of the Mother Peace Tarot.
Yeah.
So Vicki did all the writing for the tarot deck, and her then partner Karen did all the artwork. And I spent a lot of time with that deck. And I'm not 100% certain, but I want to say that the Yes That Leads comes from the Hanged One.
Oh.
From the reading of the Hanged One, which I was pulling a lot.
Which makes perfect sense with Inanna hanging in the underworld by the hook for a while.
Yeah.
And you know, this has come up before, but I think it's worth mentioning again. That tarot card, I think, is often misinterpreted, whereas my understanding of it is this is a card of suspense, but also like surrender and receiving secret information. And some people interpret this as when Odin is hanging from the world tree and receives the runes, which is the magical language, right? So it's those moments of initiation where it might even feel like you're stuck, or it might feel like you're totally upside down and things maybe aren't even going how you envisioned or wanted them to be, and you kind of just have to surrender to it. But amazing wisdom is coming your way and deep magic, right?
Yes.
That's definitely how the Yes That Leads feels. It's so fucking intense, Kelli. That song is so intense.
Yeah. I'm laughing because we played some live shows, some previews a couple months ago, and that was definitely the one where at the end, like, people did not know what to do with themselves. Yeah.
In the best way. It's intense. So let's talk about how you created these songs. You talked about improvising with other musicians. Where did the lyrics come in? What spaces were you working in? I mean, as much as you care to share and giving us a peek behind the sonic curtain would be welcome.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, I did this artist residency in Crete, and that's where I started writing what I refer to now as the seeds of the album. And at the time, I knew it was going to be about transformation. So I was collecting seeds that had to do with the cycle. And I have my spreadsheets, which everyone teased me about, but I was slowly filling in the seeds into the spreadsheet of like where I needed information to express the cycle.
Incredible.
Yeah. And then we ended up recording the album in Iceland. And as I mentioned, I went there with a quartet, and all of us are, kind of have a similar background in jazz. So I think that was like our shared language. And basically each day we would start the session by just doing like free improvisation for however long, just to kind of like get us in that flow of things. And then we would visit a stage in the cycle, and I would kind of talk them through like my understanding of it and relate it to the myth of Inanna and kind of get them to touch into where they had experienced that in their own lives. And we would play the seeds and improvise them. And I think initially, because we thought we were going to create the album in a similar way that Talk Talk did with Spirit of Eden, we just stretched them out into these like long form, like landscapes that we imagined we'd be cutting up. And I definitely thought like I would be rewriting a lot of the lyrics and re-recording the vocals and yada, yada. So I was, in a way, it helped make me be like, just really like playful.
More free. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm more free. But what I came to realize through the process was that the recordings had a quality that could never be recreated. And they have a quality that you do not chop up. And so then we started bringing in a bunch of other players to come. We wouldn't send them the music in advance. They'd come into the studio. We'd hit play and record at the same time, and they'd be reacting to the music in real time.
Whoa.
So, going on their own journey, right? And then from that, we did a bit of chopping up and moving things around, but by and large, like what you hear now is like a giant collective improvisation.
And that has to take a lot of trust and surrender on your part too.
Yeah, I could only see so far. Like this whole album, even to this day, feels like this dream that I can like see shapes of, but it's just like one step at a time. And then the shapes start to come clearer into focus. Yeah, it's on its own trip.
Oh, that's such an amazing synchronicity, because last night I was having dinner with a friend and she was talking about how she's trying to write something and how it feels like walking in the dark. And she brought up this Virginia Woolf quote, and I'm going to totally mangle it because I don't have it in front of me. But it's something to the effect where Woolf writes like, the future is dark and that's the best way it can be, I think. And it's this idea that like it's a mystery, and that means it has the potential to be anything. And you kind of discover as you go, as you write, as you make music, as you make magic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the making of this music has really helped me surrender to that, approaching life like that.
Yeah. I love that you like had a spreadsheet. You had like some preparation and research, and yet I'm sure you were also like, I'll abandon the plan if something better comes through, right?
Yes.
And it often does, at least in my experience. Like with my books, I outline them, but then they change as I'm writing them. And, you can't like stick too closely to the map, because spirit might take you in this totally other terrain that's more interesting and more rich than you thought. But it's like nice to have a map when you first go.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
On that note, we're going to take another quick break, and we'll be right back.
This episode of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Logos, the oil candle brand where ancient myth meets modern ritual. Logos isn't just a candle, it's a sacred tool. Refillable, sustainable, and rich with symbolic resonance, each flame is a whisper from the gods, designed to illuminate your altar, your space, and your soul. Crafted with clean-burning eco-fuel oil and poured into vessels inspired by Greek archetypes, every Logos candle becomes a personal invocation. Choose from scents like Aphrodite, all roses and warm skin, or Hades, deep, smoky, and mysterious. They sent me an Artemis oil candle, of course, and I think it is so beautiful and so wildly divine, and it now has a prominent place in my home. And because magic is meant to be lived, not just lit, Logos candles are made to be refilled again and again, so your rituals can evolve just like you do. Summon your flame, write your myth. Visit logoscandles.com and enter code WITCH for 25% off your first order and free shipping. That's logoscandles.com, spelled LOGOS. candles.com, and use code WITCH for 25% off your first order and free shipping. Logos, we make magic. This season of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab. For 20 years, indie scent artist Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab, known affectionately as BPAL, has been formulating perfume oils for each month's full moon, inspired by their colorful names and descriptions in historical almanacs. 2025 will be no exception. Look for their monthly launches called A Little Lunacy, which include not only these limited edition scents for fellow lunatics, but also an ongoing series of perfumes inspired by classical artworks, and some which raise funds for a variety of charitable causes. The lab's general catalog is teeming with perfume oils, hair gloss sprays, beard oils, and bath oils, which can be yours year-round, covering a truly bewildering range of scent types and inspirations that include cinema, Gothic literature, and occultism. To that end, BPAL recently brought back a recurring scent series called An Evening with the Spirits, drawing from legends and historical accounts of Victorian-era spiritualism. These haunting scents, such as Psychodynamic Discharge and the Fox Sisters, will remain in Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab's web shop well into 2025. Month by month, year by year, the lunacy continues at blackphoenixalchemylab.com. Hi, Witch Wavers. I know, and you know, you want some Witch Wave merch. And our print-on-demand merch site is now available through Dashery. So if you want to get different variations of our gorgeous Witch Wave logo designed by Thunderwing, or our Witches Are the Future catchphrase designed by Lara Antal, printed on everything from t-shirts, mugs, totes, stickers, magnets, notebooks, you name it, you can. Shirts come in different styles and fabrics and are available in sizes small through 5XL, so you can order whatever you'll feel you're most comfortable and most magical in. So head on over to witchwave.dashery.com. That's witchwave.dashery.com, or you can click the Dashery link in the Witchwave shop over at witchwavepodcast.com/shop. Welcome back to the Witch Wave. How has it been playing live? I have to guess that an improvised album might present challenges to play live, but maybe I'm inferring things.
Well, I think for now, at least, we're trying to stick pretty close to the recorded product. I just said product. To
Understood.
the recorded album.
You did, in fact, produce it. It is technically,
Okay.
yes, a product.
Yeah, we're trying to stick close to the garden. Let me say that.
Yes.
Okay, so because I think similar to like how I spent so much time with the seeds, and it was from that level of embodiment and familiarity that I was able to branch out and allow it to become what it became. I think it's really important for the live crew, for all of us to like really get this music in the cycle in its current form in our bones.
Yes.
But long term, my dream is to start to open this thing up. and to even like maybe align the performances with the seasons and have, different ways that we're approaching, or use a different myth even.
Yeah.
Because the cycle of transformation is present in so many different stories. But I want to keep this exciting to all of us, because what I don't want to happen is what can happen when you're touring, where like you're playing the same thing night after night and it just becomes kind of like a job. And I want to keep it alive.
Yeah.
So
I can imagine that getting to hear this album live is different than a passive experience. Like, it feels to me like it's going to be, I don't know, I keep coming back to that word, spiritual. And I know that you want to play it in different environments and not just the traditional sort of like clubs and stuff.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about where you foresee some of those shows taking place?
Yeah. I'm like, it's just one place and it's caves.
Yes. Caves,
It's just caves.
all day, all night, baby.
Yeah. So we did do some preview shows, like I said, in Kingston, where I live in upstate New York, and we transformed the venue into a cave. Yeah.
Can you, what does that mean?
So I worked with a local artist named Amanda Russo Rubin, and she built a cave portal entry to cover the doorway into the venue.
Incredible.
Yeah. And there were many other magical elements that I'm a little bit keeping close to the cuff right now, but I will say that they will be there for you when we come to a cave near you. And it's like it's an immersive experience that is bringing a lot of like ritual into form, because it's so important. Like, the audience is informing the music just as much as the players are.
Yeah.
And it's all about bringing our creative energies together and our presence and our intention to create something that will never be replicated.
I cannot wait to see it myself. I really wanted to come to one of your shows in Kingston, and just the schedules didn't align.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to talk about this yet, but I saw one of the venues, I'll call that loosely, where you will be performing in the fall. And I'm already like, I'm there.
Yeah,
that
you have to come.
Incredible place to play.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So do you want me to share it, or?
I mean, I would, up to you. This is your story,
this is
my
hot
friend.
hot off the presses, folks.
Yes.
But yeah, we're playing in a cave in upstate New York in the town of Rosendale.
Yes.
And it's called Widow Jane Mine. So it's technically was a cement mine for many years, but it's a cave-like space, natural space. And we'll be there the last weekend in September for 2 nights.
Okay. I am so there. I need to coordinate with you.
Yeah.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Kelli, how do catacombs strike you? Is that cave-like enough? Or does the natural space call for you? And the reason I'm asking is because, not that I haven't in there, but Greenwood Cemetery here in Brooklyn, they have concerts in the catacombs now.
I would be so down. It's very cave adjacent. I definitely prefer the natural setting, but Widow Jane Mine, as I said, it's like technically a mine, but we're going to call it a cave. You know?
Right.
Yeah, but catacombs, count me in.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
And I have to imagine that playing in literal caves is challenging in terms of like wiring and temperature and all those things. Nonetheless, do you have other caves on your list that you'll be playing in, or do you just have places you're going to be approaching?
Well, I have another spreadsheet of caves. So I've been doing a lot of research, and I'm also like putting the call out if anybody knows of a great cave. Ideally it's a cave that already has the infrastructure to host music, which you'd be surprised. There's actually a fair amount in the US, and I've been looking in Europe.
Oh,
yeah.
How
so
fabulous.
Ideally they have infrastructure, but for the right cave, I'll do whatever it takes.
Oh my goodness. I love caves, like for real. I've always loved them. I remember being little, and I don't know if you watched Reading Rainbow, but there was the cave episode where LeVar Burton talks all about like stalactites and stalagmites, and it blew my tiny mind. I could not imagine a more beautiful, sparkling world. And ever since then, whenever I can go on cave tours and stuff. It's my favorite. And I
Me
even
too.
considered, I'm like, maybe I should, become a spelunker. I don't know. Haven't gone down that route. My trouble
Yeah.
is I don't like to be cold, Kelly, but I love everything else about a cave.
Same. And most caves are like 55 degrees. So
Yeah.
you just have to like bundle up. But I relate. I don't like to be cold.
Well, maybe we need to get down with some cave couture and we'll just wear fabulous like fur-lined cloaks and robes and things, which would be appropriate, I think.
Totally.
Ethical fake fur, I should just say, for the people.
Of course.
Now, I almost want to say, like, spoiler alert, but you did actually share the final track of this album publicly already.
Yeah.
So if you feel comfortable talking about the fact that we land on, at the end of this cycle, at least your musical cycle, Aphrodite, the goddess Aphrodite, and you invoked her earlier. She's on your wall. And that is the title of the final track. What called you to end with Aphrodite?
For a while, we had that song in an earlier part of the cycle, and it just wasn't feeling right. And I think the more I realized what the song symbolized, which was for me coming to terms with the fact that this is why I'm here. I'm here to make music.
Yes.
And this is my calling. And this is as hard as it is, and as little validation that is there to support me sometimes. Like I would die if I wasn't making music. And so to me, it represents both like the boon that we receive from going into the underworld, that wisdom that we receive. And it also represents that the cycle just starts all over again.
Exactly. And do you feel like Aphrodite is a goddess that is related to your music specifically somehow, or your understanding of yourself as an artist, or understanding of what an artist even is?
Yeah. I mean, I think especially like her relationship to water and how much being in the sea in Greece helped me bring this project into form. And then there's also like Sophia's another one. I know I mentioned her before, who comes up. I have her Hildegard's vision of her on my arm here.
Oh, beautiful.
There's a relationship between Sophia and Aphrodite that just feels very true to me. Yeah. And then, well, I'll stop there. Yeah.
Oh, no, I want to know what else you were going to say.
I was just going to say, I'm a Pisces, and like my Venus is in Pisces. And so there's something there with these like goddesses that come from the sea that just feels like where I came from.
I often say that the most personal is the most potent. And that comes from our magic. That's true of our creativity. And the fact that something so personal to you is so powerful to me, I think really is a reflection of that principle because, and forgive me, I forget the exact lyric, but it's something to the effect of like, I was born to sing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think, yes, literally you're singing about yourself, but it resonated with me on so many levels because, first of all, I also love to sing, and getting back to my own music and getting confidence around that has been a whole other journey I've been on. But even bigger than that, it's just like we were all born to sing. And it doesn't have to be literal singing. Singing is expressing your magic, your creative force, or your relationship to your creative force in exactly the way you were born to do it.
Yeah.
So even though you're singing about yourself clearly in that moment, and I got that, I also felt like I also was born to sing. And anybody listening to you sing those words is going to feel that way too.
Yeah. I'm so glad to hear that because that's definitely the message.
Oh, so splendid. Well, listen, Kelli, we just have a few more minutes. I know you're going to be going on tour. I also know that you have a double LP of this album that's available. And I'm so glad because I really wanted an LP of No Rush. And I'm so glad I can get one of this album. What else do you want people to know? How can people find this music? How do you prefer people, download the music? I imagine Bandcamp is probably preferable, but anything you care to share around that, please do.
Yeah, I would say in terms of like staying in touch and getting updates and stuff, my website's a great place, which is kellyscarr.com, also Instagram.
And I'll just interrupt to say it's Kelli with an I, KELLISCARR.
Thank you. Yeah. And then in terms of supporting the music, Bandcamp's definitely preferable. I'm sure you've heard streaming services aren't really cutting it for most musicians.
For sure.
Yeah, stream away. But if you want to support the project, Bandcamp's an awesome way to do that.
Awesome. And is the double LP still available?
Yeah, it's still available. We're doing a limited first run. So we have some copies left. And,
save one for me, Kelli, please.
I will. For sure.
I will order one from you.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. And people can get that at Bandcamp as well or at your shows?
Both. Yeah.
Okay. Fabulous.
Yeah.
And how can people learn about your tour and your amazing cave adventure?
I do have a newsletter called The Loop that I send out once every week or 2 or 3, depends. And that's the best place because that's where I really feel comfortable opening up to. And I'm sharing a lot of like behind the scenes about the project and of course the tour dates and stuff. But they'll also pop up like on my website and Instagram. And I think they also pop up on Spotify now.
So I'm going to give your newsletter a double plug because, and I say this with all sincerity, your newsletter is one of the few newsletters that I'm actually like excited to read because not only do I get to learn about what you're up to, but you also then shout out all these other projects that you're a fan of, books you're reading, podcasts you're listening to, and you have impeccable taste. So I highly recommend that people sign up for your newsletter. It's really, really good.
I'm blushing. I didn't know you read it.
Of course.
Thank you so much. That's so awesome.
Kelli, I mean, I'm a huge fan. I don't know if you can tell.
Well, it's very mutual. And I have to just say that the way you responded to No Rush was like so affirming. And you were definitely in like the constellation of beings that this music was made with the intention to please. So
I'm so honored. Now you're going to make me cry.
Yeah.
And mission accomplished. I am pleased. I'm delighted. I'm healed. Like, I just love this music so much. I love your music so much. And I cannot wait to meet you in person and hear your music live very, very soon.
Yes, for sure.
Yes. Kelli, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
That's it for the show. Thank you again to Kelli Scarr for sharing her sacred songs with me. Do you have questions, feedback, need some witchly advice, or just want to share something magical that happened to you recently? Drop us an email or voice message over at witchwavepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and you just might make it on the Witch Wire. The Witch Wave is a Phantasmophile production written and produced by me, Pam Grossman. This episode was recorded, edited, and mixed by Josh Wilcox and/or Walter Nordquist and myself. Our theme music is the song Hand and I by Lycanthia. Our new Witch Wave logo was designed by Thunderwing. Special thanks go to Matt Freeman, Laura Antal, and Cece Pascal. You can check out information about this and other episodes on our website and now buy Witchwave merch at witchwavepodcast.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at witchwavepod, and you can check out my witch emoji for iPhone by going to witchemoji.com or downloading it in the App Store. My books Waking the Witch from Gallery Books and Witchcraft from Taschen are available everywhere now. And if you want more Witch Wave or you would just like to support the show, please join us over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/witchwave. Thank you so much for listening. Witches are the future. I'll catch you next time on The Witch Wave.